Let me ask you a question. If you had to work for your money, right, and earn every single dollar or shilling, whatever your currency is, and someone else can basically just show up and print that money that you have to work for out of thin air and use it. In today's world, we call that counterfeiting. But see, what if this person that's printing the money was protected by law and allowed by the laws that they set to print that money without any negative consequences? In today's world, this is what we call the government. The government can actually, sorry, the government can actually print the currency that you have to work for. The system can print money at will. And this is the problem that Bitcoin solves. So let's talk about cryptocurrencies. Right now, if you go on to, let's say, Binance, for example, you will find more than 100,000 unique cryptocurrencies. So if there are so many currencies in the world, I can hear you asking, what is so special about Bitcoin? Why should I pay attention to Bitcoin? Who started Bitcoin? Why is Bitcoin important? Well, I'll attempt to answer these questions one by one. So who made Bitcoin? We don't know. Who invented the tire? Who invented the first rubber tire? Probably have to Google it, because thanks to technology right now, we can be able to know almost anything. But do we really care about who built the first tire? Do you care about who patented electricity? Is it even patented? The idea that you can run a turbine in a river or a waterfall, the idea that you can put a turbine next to a waterfall or a flow of water and make it turn and turn that kinetic energy into electricity, that idea is more important to us human beings than knowing what the name of the guy who discovered the electricity is to us. It is more beneficial to know how electricity works rather than, sorry, there's a plane overhead. Here we go. The perks of being out and about. But so the idea is, we don't really care about who invented electricity. All we care about is to know how it works and how it can impact our lives positively, right? So in the same breath, I would say we really don't care who invented Bitcoin. All we care about is how it works and why it works. Why is Bitcoin a better money than fiat currency? Fiat means by decree. Fiat is a Latin word that loosely translates to because I said so. Because I said you can use this money to pay my taxes, and I have military power backing it, meaning if you refuse, I can actually take it by force from you. This is what by fiat means, because I said so, right? So you have one money that is backed by because I said so, and then you have another money that is backed by real mathematics, numbers. This is what code is. It's mathematics, it's numbers. It is instructions that cannot be veered away from. So let's back up a bit. So who invented Bitcoin? The first instances of Bitcoin, the idea behind Bitcoin was presented to the world in 2008. There's a truck behind me that's coming in. That's all the noise that you can hear. Some construction going on behind me. So like I was saying, who invented Bitcoin? I don't know. But does it really matter? No, it does not. Why? Because Bitcoin is based on code. Can we really trust the code? Yes. Why? How can we trust the code? One, it is open source. What does open source mean? Open source means nobody, no single entity owns or has patented, has put a copyright on this code, meaning anybody in the world can actually open the bonnet of this code. I'm using an analogy of a vehicle here. Anybody can open the bonnet and look inside and see how this thing works. Anyone can take it apart, break down all different components, and find out how this thing works and why it works. Meaning the code that runs Bitcoin is on the public domain. Anybody on the planet can be able to look under the hood of Bitcoin and look at how it works, why it works, what is the promise, and what is the future of this thing. So we don't know who built Bitcoin. Apparently it is someone or a group called Satoshi Nakamoto. We know this because the first instances of Bitcoin that appeared on the internet were signed by Satoshi Nakamoto. The communication that set the ball rolling came from an individual or a group. They just signed their communication, Satoshi Nakamoto. And I'll paste some of the links. I'll paste the link to some of the communication that was left behind by this person or this group called Satoshi, telling the world that there's this new money that can enable us to be basically set free from financial enslavement, which is what the fiat system represents. So in 2008, this was at the height of the housing market bubble in America. Now let's pretend that we don't care what America does. America is like the big brother of the world in this current system, this current setup, this current financial setup of the world. America is our big brother. So what America does is very influential for the rest of the world. And because all the currency, all the fiat currency, remember fiat means by decree. Fiat is the system that sets the money. The fiat system is the system of money that we live in today in the world. If you use Kenya shillings, dollars, ruble, the yen, you name it, whichever country you're from, the currency that you're using has been set forth by your government, and that is a fiat currency. So we if you have not watched this movie, it's called The Big Short. It basically gives you an idea of how the financial game works. When we have these big banks collapsing, when we have the hedge funds collapsing, this is usually the result of risky bets that these bankers take on borrowed money. Remember, some of these financial instruments, some of these financial vehicles, like hedge funds, like banks, they don't play by the rules that we do, right? Banks and hedge funds, they're able to borrow money, a lot of money, at very low costs, usually maybe even 0.5%, or maybe 1%, or even 2% for very long periods of time. Then they go and gamble with this money, usually to make a quick buck, right? They look at a market where they can short. And I'm sorry if I'm using a lot of jargon on this video, but I'll try and use as simple of language as I can. I know I'm speaking to millions of English-speaking people from all over the world who English might not be their first language. So I'll try and keep it simple. So when we say shorting the market, we mean that these bankers are able to take bets, risky bets, that a market can be influenced to go a certain way, right? Let's talk about supply and demand. You have an economy where there is a fixed production of goods and services. Let's say, for example, a small town, your hometown. Let's say your town has 100,000 people. These 100,000 people are producing goods worth $1 million. Let's use dollar for easy denomination. This $1 million is the total GDP of your small town. The worth of the goods and services produced by your small town is $1 million, right? So that means you have $1 million in your economy, right? Then we have this big brother called the system, and they come in and say, okay, we're going to print $1 million more and prop up the economy. They call it propping up the economy. In America, they call it quantitative easing, right? So now you have introduced 1 million more worth of paper money into the economy. Guess what that does to the value of the goods and services in the existing economy? You've introduced paper currency worth the same as is existing in the system. But you haven't increased the goods and services within that same system. So now you have the same amount of goods, but double the amount of money that is fighting to find a place within the economy. So you've increased the supply without increasing the demand. So what happens to the price of the goods and services? Automatically, the system will try and balance the money that's in the system with the amount of goods and services in the same system. So you end up with a natural rising of the price of these things, so that all the money in circulation can be able to find a spot, can be able to fit into the economy. This is what we call inflation. Inflation is basically increasing the supply of money into an economy without increasing the goods and services in said economy. So why would a system do this? Why would the system in Asia or the system in Africa do this? Well, for the simple reason that systems don't make money. Systems spend money. Systems all over the world, they spend money. They don't create money. Entrepreneurs, business people, producers, they create wealth. Systems don't create wealth. They know how to spend it. They know how to tax it. But they cannot create it from scratch. This is the difference. That's a very nice tree. I like it. Right.